Well, it's the final day of work for hundreds of Holden workers as it stops manufacturing in Australia. It's 4 years since the car maker announced it would close its South Australian factory. Reporter Nathan Stitt joins us from the Holden factory in Elizabeth. Nathan, the last car to be made in Australia has now rolled off the production line.
Yes, Nina, that is correct. We understand that the last Australian-made Holden has rolled off the production line behind me here at their facility in Elizabeth, north of Adelaide. They've kept the, the ceremonial finish there under wraps, so we haven't been allowed in, but we understand that just a short while ago, the last car, which we believe was a Holden Commodore SSV Redline, has rolled off that production line. Around 950 employees were there to witness this historic occasion because at the moment this is really the end of the line for them too. A lot of people coming to terms with life and work after Holden. Of course, here in Elizabeth we have hundreds of people that have driven from all over the country just to be here. They've driven in their Kingswoods, in their Tiranas, in their Commodores, just to witness this day, which has been one of mixed emotions. Today, much a celebration about what Holden means, but also from a lot of fans, a lot of disappointment as they look towards a future without that Australian-made Holden available to buy at the showroom around the corner.
It's a sad day in as much as, you know, like the Holdens themselves they're a world-class product, and you know obviously they're going to be manufactured overseas and imported into Australia now. But I mean, I'm a bit of a real passion enthusiast, and for me it sort of marks the end of, I suppose, rear-wheel drive V8s like this car here. You know, they're not going to be making. They may make them in the future, but everything's sort of going four-wheel drive and high technology, and you know the old cast-iron clunker V8s, you know, a thing of the past.
For many of our people, this is a new chapter, and Holden is absolutely committed to supporting them every step along the way. And this is like a family, so we want to make sure we're there for them. And what I would like to confirm today is that our world-class transition centre that we have set up will remain open for at least 12 months after today. What I can also tell you is that as a result of that centre, 85% of those employees that have left us have moved into successful transition.
A difficult road ahead for many workers looking for employment. What's being done to help them now that the factory is closed?
Well, yes, Nina, I guess we just heard from Jamie Getgood there. There's quite a lot being done by Holden itself. They have a transition centre, is what they're calling it here at their factory in Elizabeth, which is essentially what Holden's using to reskill, retrain and also introduce their workers to new employers across South Australia and interstate. So really trying to help those individuals left behind who are still looking for new employment. So we understand, as we just heard there, they're hoping to keep that transition centre open for at least 12 months. We understand they might expand that to cover at least 2 years. There's also a number of things that the local council is doing to essentially make sure that there are opportunities for these employees who are now having to come to terms with the closure of a factory that for many of these people, they've worked here for generations.
Nathan Stitt, thank you very much for that update.
Only for the workers, but for the entire community out here. It feels as though almost everyone has either worked here at Holden or has a friend or is related to someone who's been employed here over the years. The last car rolled off the production line at 10:45 this morning. It was an iconic red V8 Commodore, which will be the workers' legacy, and they gathered around and cheered as it roared off the line this morning. The company says today is about celebrating and congratulating the workers for their outstanding achievements over the years, and they were treated to a private function inside the plant. Some of them then gathered out the back and spelled out the word Holden in the car park, which made for a nice aerial view. But today also spells the end of car manufacturing in Australia, and that's a point that wasn't lost on the workers as they arrived here for their final shift this morning.
I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here. The amount of people I've met and worked with, it's probably something I'll remember for the rest of my life.
I've met some fantastic people working here, and things that have changed my life.
I've been here the longest.
How long have you been here?
53 years.
And everybody, the literally tens of thousands of workers that have worked there over the decades are entitled to be very proud of the role they've played.
Outside the Elizabeth plant resembled a car show. Hundreds of Holden enthusiasts gathered for the final day. There were some beautiful cars, some new, some old, some dating right back to the 1950s. Holden has produced more than 7.6 million cars over 69 years of production. The police were on hand, just keeping an eye on the traffic situation. It got very busy out here with these Holden enthusiasts, and we spoke to some a little earlier on. They told us today it's very bittersweet for them.
So this car's been in my family since new, so a really long time. My great-grandfather gave it to me.
It's sad, but look, we've got to move on, I guess. We're here to wish the employees all the best for their future.
Made the trek here to pay our respects to Holden, last day of manufacturing cars in Australia, which is, it's sad.
Holden management says of the more than 700 employees who've left the company since it announced it was closing nearly 4 years ago, 75% have gone on to find other work. But the union today says that many of those people who found work have only been able to find part-time work, and especially those aged over 50 years old, they've only been able to find part-time work, so they're complaining of underemployment. There are concerns about the impact this closure will have on the state economy and on the community. There is already high unemployment here in the northern suburbs.
All right, certainly the end of an era. Edward Godfrey, thank you.
And the Australian car industry finally runs out of gas. This is the last car we'll ever make. Making cars here in Australia is officially dead, with the Holden plant in Adelaide grinding to a halt. As Alan Murrah reports, there were some tears, but also a sense of celebration.
The last Holden described by all as perfect. Inside the factory, the farewell to Australian car making was just for the workers. Many have Holden in their blood. Mike Randall's worked at the Adelaide factory for 53 years.
Pop said to me, if you want a permanent job, go to Holden's. His whole family's working here.
Outside, Holden enthusiasts had travelled from across the country in all makes and models in order to say goodbye. Christian Mason came from Hobart with his specially commissioned plates.
It just marks the end of any Australian car rolling off a production line in Australia, whether it's a Ford, a Toyota, a Mitsubishi or a Holden.
Mitsubishi's been gone 9 years, Ford a year, and Toyota shut just last month. Holden was the first to make a wholly Australian car, so it was sadly fitting that it brought the manufacturing of cars in Australia to an end.
So I think it's sad for Australia with the industry dying.
Well, it's pretty sad, isn't it? Like, manufacturing's buggered now for the country.
The Prime Minister promises he's creating new jobs, making new things.
And of course, in South Australia in particular, our massive investment in naval shipbuilding is going to deliver thousands of jobs, manufacturing jobs at the very cutting edge.
But they won't feel the same.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
It's in our songs, it's in our poems, it's in our stories, Holden, and it's gone.
Alan Murrell, 10 Eyewitness News.
End of an era.
Australian car manufacturing is officially dead. The final Holden came off the country's last car assembly line today, triggering an emotional farewell to an Australian icon and an industry.
The last Aussie-made Holden. It'll go into a museum. Our car manufacturing industry itself, now a museum piece. For these 950 Holden employees, an unsure future after working there for so long.
It's been 20 years.
30 years. 53 years.
They were determined to be there right to the bitter end.
Life is hard. We are resilient, but we will survive. I wish good luck to us all.
In 1948, Prime Minister Chifley launched Australia's own car.
They became icons.
Holden, you in my Holden.
The FJ, the Monaro, the Commodore.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
Embedded in our culture.
The Kingswood? You're not taking the Kingswood?
The now ex-Holden workers were treated like rock stars as they left, feted by enthusiasts who'd earlier done a drive-by.
We come to pay our respects to the last day of manufacturing cars in Australia.
Later, the workers were feted by Jimmy Barnes at the Adelaide Oval. Nick McCallum, 7 News.
A sad day.
Well, today marks the final day of car manufacturing in Australia. Holden has closed its Elizabeth factory in North Adelaide after 54 years of production. The company started as a saddlery in 1856, with the Elizabeth plant opening in 1963. The first entirely built car off the production line, the 1965 HD Holden. At its peak between 2003 and 2005, it rolled out 780 vehicles a day, including the Commodore, Adventurer and Statesman models. In its final months, it produced 175 cars a day. The last off the line, a Holden Commodore.
Holden workers had 4 years' notice to prepare for this day. It still hit hard.
It's going to be an emotional day. It's not the easiest thing, but life will go on.
The final car to be made in Australia left the production line before noon.
We didn't want somebody else to build that last car. I wanted to build it.
955 employees out of a job.
Every Australian feels for them, and of course for the end of an era.
It is a challenge. It's another massive shock to the South Australian economy.
Outside the manufacturing plant, some fans toasted the end of an era. Others mourned the loss of a local icon. Some of those who have come down here to Elizabeth today were hoping for a glimpse of the last car to roll off the production line, but for that they'll have to wait. The last Commodore, not for public view today, but destined for a museum. When Holden first set up in Adelaide's north, the factory fostered a community. It was a place where hard work was rewarded.
Oh, terrific. I could say nothing bad about Holden's at all.
And by the 1950s, a popular choice for migrants seeking a new life after World War II. Claude Feltram's father, Alessandro, along with his brothers, got jobs at Holden the same week they arrived in the country.
It changed their lifestyle. They came from a poor to be able to live in a modern city and have a lot of things they could never ever afford back home.
His father stayed loyal to the company for the rest of his life, with a flourishing career.
It's not bad for a person who can't read or write English or Italian to become foreman at Holden's. It was quite an achievement, yeah.
Holden will retain a design and engineering presence in Australia, but today was about the workers and an industry now over.
Today is about this plant and this group of employees. It's an opportunity to say thank you on behalf of General Motors and on behalf of Holden. So thank you.
There is nowhere else they can use that type of knowledge because nobody else makes cars.
Many former workers are now planning to retrain, but for some, the closure means early retirement, with only memories of their roles in a once proud industry remaining. Rhiannon Elston, SBS World News.